Hello and welcome to another episode of Pay Attention. I have to tell you, it's been an amazing last few days for me. I've been working with this director that I worked with at the Hollywood Fringe Festival last year, and he really helped me to start speaking from the heart rather than speaking from my ego. So I'm trying that out today. The podcast is called Pay Attention, where we're paying attention to those hidden influences in our body and mind, and how if we're not aware of them, they really affect our lives. And mine was that nervousness, that ego, not only in my mind, but in my body as well. Just last night and every night I would wake up and I don't even really have to think too much, and my stomach would go into this crazy, upset kind of mode for like a couple hours. And it would, if you're not paying attention, that can really start to make you think, why is this happening? What have I done wrong? And just lamenting all of those things that created that mind, gut connection in the first place. So I'm excited to introduce my guest today who can speak to that they are starting to understand that a lot of our physical symptoms are related to how the brain and the body talk together. Okay, so my guest today is Jen Uschold, is a seasoned physical therapist with over 30 years experience specializing in pain science, mental fitness, and health coaching. And we've met, I love how I'm meeting guests on this podcast. We met in our mutual quest to speak at conferences for students and to kind of spread what we've learned on our journey to the younger people, because the younger you can get to this, the better. So welcome, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you're at, what your passions are, and then we're going to get started on that mind-body connection, which I'm so excited about. So.
Absolutely. I'm happy and thrilled to speak on this topic. I am very passionate about my work. I am a physical therapist, as you mentioned, and probably about 10 years or so, I got into health and wellness coaching. And then really about the same time, I started doing a deeper dive into pain science. And pain science, we are using an approach called pain neuroscience education, which is helping people overcome pain with evidence-based strategies that are all non-pharmacological, and they are all non-surgical, and they are not injection-based. So it's very exciting because we have a massive problem with pain in our country and our world. And I'm now integrating that with mental fitness or positive intelligence, the work of Shirzad Chamine, and they just blend so well together. It's a framework that helps people understand more how the complexities of our pain experiences are influenced by what is going on in our brain and our nervous system. Because really, pain is always an output of the brain. People think the body is creating the pain. So I'm sure we'll dive into that, but it's really important that we need to have our brain and our nervous system at a safe level of sensitization, because when it's elevated, it takes less to trip the alarm, and the alarm is pain and any other number of physical experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, I'm so excited to have you here today because I'm on this journey that the listeners are joining me on, which I love. And just last night, I could see it. I could see my body is so sensitive to that anxiety, that buildup in my stomach that I've done for years that I don't even have to think anything, right? But I last night I'm practicing, and changing that mind-body connection. But before we start that, I wanted to ask you, is pain science a new term, or what does that mean exactly, pain science?
The study of pain. So it's not new. We have really expanded our knowledge around how pain works, mostly in thanks to PET scans and CT scans back in the 90s, because then we could see that, pain isn't only located in the body. And prior to that, we were working on a model from Rene Descartes, the philosopher. So like 300 or 400 years old. So it's new in terms of the world, but it's not so new. We're several decades into pain science and helping people understand pain and ways to get over it without surgery and
Yeah,
medication.
I love that. I love that because I think you're absolutely right. There's so much we can do by training the mind, and a lot of the pain is a habit, a pattern that we've created. I wonder if Eckhart Tolle's pain body, in the Power of Now, is similar to what you're talking about. But all right. So what I teach is, when we have these habits and patterns, that hypothalamus sends all these chemicals down into our body, and the body has all these receptors, and it receives those chemicals. So anytime you think of anxiety or even low self-worth, you start to infuse your body with that. But that in turn, then we forget that we did that. And like you said, everyone thinks the pain in their body is just that, right? But something created it. So just explain to me or to our listeners, how do we create this pain in the body from the brain, from the mind?
I do like to do this with stories. So can we go through one of our most popular stories to help people understand pain?
Sure, I love it.
Okay, it's called the sensitive alarm story. And so, Holly, my first question for you is, if you were to step on a rusty nail, would you want to know that you've stepped on a rusty nail?
Well, I wish I wouldn't have, but of course, yes.
Yeah. And why would you want to know?
So that you can get it out of your foot.
Yeah. And maybe make sure your tetanus is up to date, right?
That's right. That's
So,
right.
in this case, and often pain is protective. And people often think that all pain is bad. However, if you didn't feel that, or if you don't feel your hand on a hot stove, we've got bigger problems than the pain you experience.
Right.
So, can we also agree that if you step on that nail or you burn your hand on the stove, it's going to be a few days before it feels better? You may have some soreness or pain.
Of course. Of course.
Right. So people also think that all pain means something is wrong with the tissues. And the reality is it takes the nervous system time to get back to its baseline. So when your foot feels sore for a few days after you step on the nail, that pain doesn't mean additional damage. It means your nervous system is doing its work to
Uh-huh.
get back to baseline.
Okay.
So we have a super brief anatomy lesson here. Your nervous system is made up of your brain, your spinal cord, and 400 nerves. So those 400 nerves are all connected like a crazy highway, 45 miles in length. So for your listeners, think about what is 45 miles from where you are right now. That is how far we could lay your nerves end to end. So you
Wow.
mentioned before that we have all these receptors in our body, and we do. However, we do not have pain sensors. We do not have pain nerves. What we have are danger sensors, and they send that information up to the brain for processing. And the brain is taking into account 11 million pieces of information a
Patient.
second,
Second. Yep. That's
and
right.
its job is to protect you. And
Yep.
so it has to very quickly decide, Holly has stepped on a nail. We need to let her know based on your past experiences, your current environment, your belief about pain, and many other factors. And if it determines the threat, then you will feel pain. Now, here's the deal. Your brain may choose not to have you feel pain stepping on that nail if you are running away from a rabid dog. So your brain is choosing to get you the safety of getting away from the dog. And then, more likely than not, once you have received and found that safety, then you will probably feel the nail in your foot. So all these 400 nerves, they have a little bit of a buzz in them all the time. It lets us know we're alive. And when we step on the nail, it elevates and it crosses a particular threshold where you'll experience pain. We expect that to come down in a period of time. The challenge we have, 1 in 4 people, it doesn't come back down. So I describe this as if you have a house alarm. And
Hmm.
would you want your house alarm to go off if a brick went through your window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What if somebody altered the sensitivity on your house alarm and your house alarm went off when a leaf hit the window?
Exactly. No, but that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. And so this is the conversation I have with my clients. Is it possible your house, your body is okay? And we need to focus on the sensitivity of the alarm.
Oh, I love the way you explain that, Jen, because it is true, right? It's all about, in my 20-year journey, piecing this all together, it's all about the brain is trying to protect you, right?
Yes.
And for my anxiety, for my stunk over the years, it's always been my nemesis in some ways. I learned a lot from it and all of that. But I am so sensitive to that now that I don't even have to think anything. Nothing has to happen. I wake up and it's okay, it's time for this, this entourage of stomach pain. And recognize it's a habit, right? It's and as you call sensitivity. And from what I've learned and from what, we can absolutely change those sensitivities and tell the brain, is it a matter of telling the brain, look, this isn't keeping me safe. This isn't what I need. Or, what kind of, how do you change those sensitivities?
Part of the beauty of pain science is we have so many evidence based options. We have
Mm-hmm.
four main pillars, and those main pillars are education and exercise, sleep, and goals. It is very cool because we have fMRI brain scans of people doing a painful movement, learning about pain,
Uh-huh.
and then doing that painful movement again, and their brain has calmed down beautifully.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just understanding makes a big difference. And it's really important. It's not only about the brain, it's about the body and the brain. So when we are giving, promoting movement, exercise, even just little bits at a time, that blood flow and that movement, that decreases the sensitivity in those nerves. And then that makes us go back to the brick setting off the alarm rather than the leaf. And so I tell my
Okay.
clients, we have to exercise your body to benefit your body and your brain. We have to
Mhm.
exercise your brain to benefit your body and your brain. And then we have
Right.
a 22 plus program, which are just 22 additional options. And you talk a
Wow.
lot about thoughts. So I talk a lot with my clients about thoughts, thought viruses and thought antibodies and thought antidotes. And so there's so many options, and it comes down to what's the client's desires, needs, and where are they ready to work.
Wow, I love this. So Jen had heard this 10-minute talk I was giving at a conference in Chicago. And she said to me, we have so much in common. And I'm just hearing all of that right now. And what I love about my journey is as an architect, and I've mentioned this many times, as an architect in general, you kind of know a little bit about when you're building buildings, about mechanical and structural and electrical, where you have people that know a lot. And obviously, you know a lot about what's going on here. And I love that because I know from my journey and is that you can change the pain in your body. You can rewire the brain to understand that, it doesn't need to go off when the leaf hits the house, right? But
Yes.
you're telling me now that it's really just calming those nerves in the brain and throughout the body, correct?
If I wanted to create a one sentence summary, we need to create safety in the nervous system so it
Okay.
is not perceiving a threat when there isn't one. And some people, they're like, I don't ever want to feel pain. And people are born without the ability to feel pain, but they don't live very long because they're not getting that necessary information. So
Yeah.
pain is merely information, and we get to decide what to do with it. You put your hand on a hot stove, please take your hand off the stove. You put your
Right.
hand on a warm countertop, well, maybe that shocks you and you're like, whoa, that's hot. Oh no, it really feels warm because I just came in from the cold. And
Yeah.
so having people understand that they get to choose what to do with that information and what
Yep.
strategies they want to use is
Mhm.
where the power lies.
That is so true. And understanding that you are not at the mercy of the pain in your body, that you can do something about it, that you have control of your mind and training that mind and paying attention and changing those sensitivities. I have a friend, a good friend who has MS and she can't feel in her fingers and her feet. And she actually cut her thumb off by accident like a month ago. And the only way she knew that she did was the sound of the saw. And so you're right. It's like there's a book, The Road Less Traveled. It's not The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. It's The Road Less Traveled
Yes, I know that
by
book.
you do, yes. And the first line of that book is that life is difficult,
Yeah.
right? And so you're right. It's not about not having pain in your life. It's about training your mind to judge the pain more accurately. And I suppose that it's all that chaos, that 11 million bits of information, I call it, that madhouse of thoughts, emotions, and feelings in your head that gets those sensitivities so off whack in the first place. But what would you say? How do I get that I wake up and I just go crazy with my anxiety? How do we get so far off course?
If you were my client, I would get really curious first about your sleep, to be honest, because when we wake up with whether it's pain or anxiety, is there something going on with the quality of our sleep? Are you getting in and through the stages of sleep so that you're
Mm-hmm.
actually getting the tremendous brain benefits of sleep? So that
Mm-hmm.
might be a starting point. We would spend time getting really curious about the anxiety. What are the contributing factors and what those factors can you do something about? And the
Mm-hmm.
factors you can't, where's your ability to accept them versus
Right.
getting caught up in the spiral? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit where my work in mental fitness comes in, just this merging of how the left side of our brain is dominantly where negative emotions are housed, and that
Mm-hmm.
becomes a very strong dominant pattern. But we can use both pain science and the mental fitness to create and shift over towards the right. And when we're working and focusing from the right side of our brain, we
Yeah.
are then able to be more empathic. We are more productive. We are more connected. We are more reflective. And so all of these things, we can do that. How do we do that? It depends on each person, their story, and how they want to get there.
Yeah, where they're at on their journey. And I usually sleep for 4 hours and then I wake up. And actually I'm using those 2 hours now to retrain the brain. I've been practicing mindfulness or whatever. I've started on my journey at age 34, like 9/11, long time ago. And recently, and after COVID, I had some neurological symptoms in my fingers. And I went to my doctor and we did all this testing and my nerves are fine and there's no autoimmune. And he goes, it's anxiety. And I'm like, dude, it can't be anxiety. I freaking teach mindfulness, but then I started paying attention. It's that I do see all my anxiety. I understand. So I'm not nervous, actually. I live from the heart a lot, but those old sensitivities, those old patterns, just basically throughout my day, any little thing would cause just this very little bit of underlying anxiety. And so it's really, to me, and it's about retraining and that sensitivity and just actually telling my brain, this is not helpful anymore. This is not where I need to go. What I want to do, and when I wake up, is I want to open my heart and fill my body with love and compassion that I can then share with the world. So the timing of this conversation is fabulous, and I recognize he was right. It was, even though I understood anxiety and I could see the causes of it, until you retrain and desensitize, as you said, if you're not paying attention, you still are reinforcing those kind of high alarm situations.
Yeah. And one thing I was drawn to in your talk was the 90,000 thoughts per day and
Uh-huh.
how we repeat, I think, 80,000 of them. The research
Yeah,
is different on what the number is.
yeah,
And what I do with my clients too is, what is a new mantra? What is a thought you can introduce? So every time that anxiety hits, every time that pain hits, and you go in that fear cycle, what's the mantra that you want? And I had a client, she was so funny one day. I describe the brain also as a helicopter parent. It
okay,
sometimes does its job too well. And so her mantra was some prayer. She said, helicopter brain, we're okay. Helicopter brain, we're okay. And that's what she did over and over again. I also have my clients, I like them to do these things just before bed. What positive, helpful information can you feed your brain as you're going into sleep so that you can take that with you? And maybe you'll wake up with, 1% improvement in your anxiety. And if we compound 1% every day over a year, that's 3,700% improvement.
We are on the same page. Absolutely. It's about creating the new habit. And I tell people, if there's one thing you learn from my teachings or from listening to this podcast, if you want to change something, if you want to create something new, you must do it over and over and over and over again. And absolutely I talk to my awareness hub, our online community. It's like when you go to bed at night, just, love and compassion, and then you can wake up with that first, that tool there to, maybe not kind of get rid of the entire attack of anxiety or the onslaught of negative thoughts, but it's a tool there. And as you said, as you practice that tool gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I also, I don't want to discount the importance of movement and sometimes the manual work. The exercise is so powerful. It's very cool. They've actually done research on this. But my first question for you and your listeners is, what is the most powerful drug in the world? The most powerful pain medication, and where do we get it?
Serotonin, right? Or some kind of natural drug you're talking about. Well,
No,
this is let's see. Well, there's all kinds of drugs you can use, but I would hope there's a natural drug that you can, dopamine or something that you can create. We create these chemicals in our body, right?
Bingo. Yes. So your brain actually is the most powerful pain medicine cabinet there is. And it's not one medication, but all these neurotransmitters. And the great thing is that, you stub your toe, hurts like heck, right? That information goes up to the brain and then you feel it. And then you're like, well, but I still have to get my laundry done. Your brain's like, oh, okay, here, have some pain meds. And the problem is, the brain is doing what it needs to do to protect you. And some people ignore this information from the brain. So if it is really worried about you, it might choose to shut off your pain medication, so to speak, keeping your pain elevated because it's not getting enough input for safety. And the research that I love is they took runners and running 6 miles at a moderate pace, your brain can create the equivalent of an entire dose of morphine, standard dose.
Wow. Okay. Well, sometimes there's just simple things that people should know, like, what does meditation mean, or what's the mind, but just understanding why exercise, right? And that reason that you just explained, I've never heard of before. But wow, what a great reason. I mean, besides the other benefits of it, when you were saying exercise, I'm like, yeah, exercise. But okay, if it's going to create that kind of pain medication, as you called it, yeah. And I used to run, although I'm a walker now. How far do you have to walk to get the same effect?
Right. So we know that just getting your heart rate up moderately, and research says 10 minutes, but you know what? Some of my clients, they're only ready for 1 minute. So everything you do is helping, but just a moderate raise in the heart rate gets that blood flowing enough. The physiological response is we decrease that nervous electrical stimulation of the nerves. And then again, we increase that wiggle room before that alarm threshold.
Oh, I love it. Oh, this has been wonderful. And I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope the listeners have as well. So Jen, what is kind of one thing you would leave them with that you kind of a tip that they can do right now to start to desensitize that alarm system?
Yeah. My bold mission is that pain is not a life sentence. And I would encourage your listeners to get curious to learn how pain actually works. We cannot be good at anything unless we first understand it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. We can't expect people to overcome chronic pain if they have no idea what it is. And it's
if they keep thinking there's nothing they can do about it, if it's just in the body. Right. Well, great advice. And you're a great person, a great expert to get that kind of knowledge. So is there any programs you want to promote, or any kind of website or anything you would like to, where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have two websites. My physical therapy website is 180, the numbers, therapyandwellness.com. And then I also have an online 6-month coaching program called Pain to Gain, and that is at iriseforme.com.
Nice. And we will put these in the show notes as well. Jen, thank you so much for being here today. Again, I learned a lot. And,
Great.
I have to contemplate and think about what you said, and maybe we'll have you back again someday.
I
Thank
would
you
love
so
it.
much for being here. And listeners, I hope that you learned as much as I did today about the control we do have over our bodies and the pain and the flare-ups in our bodies. And it sounds like there's a lot to learn about that. And maybe, even just within this podcast, we've learned a few things, I did anyway, that will start to change my thinking a little bit. So thank you so much for listening today. Jen, again, thank you for being here. Everyone go out and, get some exercise, get those pain medications going in your brain, and namaste.
Namaste.